There are many reasons you should be doing more video content in 2025, and this week I am joined by Harry Evans to talk all about why video content is essential to your social media and your SEO strategies in 2025. Stay tuned for that conversation coming up on this week's episode.
The videos that we did there were nothing special, but I don't mean that in terms of the output. I mean in terms of what we did. We took one camera, put it on a tripod, and asked people to speak. And these people spoke and told incredible stories. I think what I am very confident in is that we have nowhere near reached the peak of people needing to hear from real people, and whatever form that is going to take in the future, who knows. Not many people have watched themselves back before. Not many people have heard themselves for a long time, right? We do a lot, but most people don't listen to their own voice back a lot and just don't really sound like that, don't really look like that. Sometimes you can get real business growth from just showing up. If you're in an industry where very few people are creating video, just because you're creating video is a competitive advantage, don't let this science of great video content be a blocker to getting started, because almost every client that we work with, including ourselves and our business, is we have seen direct business growth from just posting videos, even if they're bad, because people see us showing up and showing that we care about the work that we do.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candor. I am your host, Jack Chambers Ward, and this is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest minds across SEO and digital marketing. This week I am joined by Harry Evans from 1225, and we're talking all about why you should be embracing video content in your SEO strategies and doing a lot more social media, and how video content on social media also should tie into your SEO strategies as well. Needless to say, you can probably guess this already if you are watching this, I am quite passionate about video content. I now create a lot of it because of this podcast, and I consume a lot of it. I watch a lot of YouTube and I watch a lot of other video content on social media as well. Harry has also been creating a lot of content, and we get into some brilliant discussions on how to open up those conversations with clients, how to start creating your own video content, how to get comfortable on camera, all this kind of stuff that I think is really, really useful for people who want to start making that transition and start making not just good blog posts or good content on the site, but actually making good video content as well. Like I said, Harry's got a lot of experience working with clients. I talk a lot about my experiences as well when it comes to creating video and hosting things on camera and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a really interesting conversation. Of course, speaking of video content, if you are enjoying the show, please do like and subscribe down below. Of course, that would hugely help us out on YouTube. You can please leave a comment down below as well. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Let me know what you think of the conversation between Harry and I. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, please do share them. You can also comment and rate and follow on Spotify as well. So you can leave us a 5-star review. Let me know what you're enjoying about the podcast. Let me know what you want to see in future episodes and all that kind of stuff. I would hugely appreciate any reviews, any likes, and any subscribes that are coming our way, basically. I would hugely appreciate that. And like I said, that's a key part of video content, all that engagement, all that kind of discussion, the back and forth, putting a human face to the voice is an important part of video content, and Harry and I get into that on this week's episode, which is coming up right now. My guest this week has worked in digital marketing for over a decade. You may recognize him from podcasts such as The Book Tribe and the Unscripted SEO podcast, as well as co-hosting The Building podcast, which we'll talk about in a moment, I'm sure. He is the director and co-founder at CareLaunch and 1225, the audience first SEO agency. Welcome to Search with Candor, Harry Evans.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's rare that CareLaunch gets a mention, so that was very nice.
Hey, I like to do a bit of research there, mate. I put my pride in my research, so I'm gonna give you guys a shout out. You're doing good work there as well. You're helping out the care industry, which I know is a thing that struggles a lot of the time. So it's often, it's a big thing here in Norfolk. I know a huge proportion of our employment and all that kind of stuff, and again, not to go into a completely separate topic, but all the population and stuff like that. So appreciate what you guys are doing over there. It's always nice to see somebody take a positive spin on marketing, right, and give back to communities in that way. We try to do that a lot here at Candor as well, like working with local charities and all that kind of stuff as well. So appreciate what you guys are doing over there. But I mentioned just now, You co-hosted the Building podcast, which I've listened to and watched before, and I really enjoy what you and Brendan talk about, getting into that kind of entrepreneurial kind of side of things. And I know you guys really focus on the, as I said at the top there, like the audience first approach, right? Which I think is more important than ever these days, pretty much. And that's going to kind of tie into the topic we're going to talk about, because I know you came to me and said, I think SEOs need to embrace video and social media more. And we're going to get into that in a lot more detail, I'm sure, especially with all the crazy stuff that's been going on with Google I/O recently. At time of recording, it's literally like a couple of days ago, and it's all chaos at the moment in the SEO industry.
Uh,
So why was that topic so important to you, Harry? Why do you want to kind of like focus on that specifically?
yeah, it's a good question. I think the reason it's so important to me is probably more from the education that we have had in the care industry. So that's a really nice segue into this conversation, really. So, um, we started 1225, which is one of the two agencies that we run 2 years ago, and the focus there was very much on helping our clients capitalize on the bridge that was inevitably coming between search and social. But we didn't necessarily have too much of an understanding at that point, like many of us didn't, of what that looked like. It was very much a conversation of this is coming down the road. Let's try and do something now and figure it out. And we, I think, fell into a trap that many people fall into, which was going straight to the other side, right? Which is, as you mentioned, ages me slightly, but I've been doing this for over 10 years now and firmly in the SEO camp. Like as far down as you can get in terms of like content generation for SEO purposes and things like that. That is where I sat for 10 years. And I just did that flip that just it's just the way your brain works, right? You go, okay, well, I've done that. I think social is coming. I'll go all the way to the other end, which is what we ended up
Mm.
doing. So we ended up doing a bunch of influencer stuff. We ended up chasing views and trying to jump on trends and lost our way a little bit. And then we ended up somehow very organically working with a couple of care home groups. And we decided actually let's just put some of their residents and the care, as you mentioned, they do an incredible job, and many of them don't even see the work that they do as a job. It's more like a calling for them to care for the elderly population. And the videos that we did there were from a pure, I guess the word I'm going to use here is they were nothing special, but I don't mean that in terms of the output. I mean in terms of what we did. We took one camera, put it on a tripod, and asked people to speak. And these people spoke and told incredible stories. We published them, just organically, put them on a few blogs, we put them on YouTube. And straight away, we saw a direct business impact for these care homes because it humanized them so much.
Mm.
People, thankfully, I've never had to do this yet, but at some point, when you end up putting a loved one into a care home, the entire process is incredibly stressful, and it's not something that you think about until you have to think about it. So when you're hit with a real human's face smiling back at you, telling you it's all going to be okay, it is an incredibly powerful marketing tool. And as soon as we saw that and started to see the direct business output, that's where the switch, if you like, really flipped for us. We're like, okay, this is the thing that is here now, real and tangible. Like, let's forget about, to your point, like Google I/O is very much here, just finished at the time of recording. There's still so many unknowns that I don't even think platforms like Google have figured out, right? Like it's like we know we need to play in this space, but we don't know how we're going to play in this space yet. But what we do know is that if there is a smiling face on the other end of a screen telling you it's going to be okay and that you can trust them, it's going to have a real business impact. And that is why it's quite a long way of saying, but that is why I'm so passionate about this topic of getting anybody who's working in the realms of not just SEO, but organic marketing in general, that we have to be thinking both video and audience first.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a huge part of the kind of, like you said, that faceless content we're trying to move away from in so many ways. We've obviously been talking so much about double EAT in SEO for the last few years, including adding that extra E in the last couple of years as well. And having a literal face of a person can make such a difference in terms of that psychological connection, in terms of the genuineness and the authenticity of that kind of content. Like I said, literally pointing a camera at someone who is experiencing that thing, a customer testimonial, whatever it is, and just saying, honestly, what do you think about this product? What do you think about this service? And Care, like you said, is a perfect example of that, because it can be really expensive, really stressful, and like, should I send my, my elderly relative to this one or that one, and this one's cheaper, why is that one here? They offer slightly different things, slightly different size rooms, all this kind of stuff. And actually hearing real people's experiences, for me, and again, I'm a person who now does a lot of video, especially thanks to this podcast. Like, I'm doing hours of video every week at this point. It makes such a big difference for me as a user to see an actual human being, rather than, was this AI generated? Was this just chucked out, and like, was it copied and pasted from somewhere else? That kind of thing you see so often in so much of written content now. Granted, we're seeing crazy stuff that Google is doing with video now, with their VO demos that they were running. They're a bit uncanny valley still, but still incredibly impressive. But I think you're right. There's definitely a blend I think we're seeing now, with SEO and social kind of coming together in that way, and the bigger conversation of what even is visibility and what even is brand, right? And that ties so much into different types of content, different formats, multi-channel, omni-channel approaches, and all that kind of stuff. I think you're absolutely spot on. And do you think that video is going to be a growing factor in marketing in general, or is it kind of like, have we hit too much video at this point? I feel like I see a lot of video, but I feel like people are also leaning into it.
I think to the point that I totally agree. It's actually a conversation that we have in the office quite a lot, which is, if you're at the extreme end of these scales, which naturally, like you said, like because of the work that you do, the work that we do, we consume so much content that, yeah, it can get to points where you're just like, I need a break. I don't even know what to consume. Like, I was walking the dog this morning, and for the first time in a long time, I looked at my Spotify. I was like, I'm just done. Like, I just walked, no music, no podcast, just walked for an hour and was alone with my thoughts. But I think what we're definitely guilty of, in terms of, I put myself and my team in this, is it's easy to forget that we're in this every day. And for most of the businesses that we work with, the consumers are not. Right. So I probably stick with now with the care example, although we do work with ours, but care's a good example, which is, um, the typical buyer of care services is probably on the young end of that, 35. Average is probably somewhere between 55 and 65. The lives that our target audience live there is drastically different. They are, of course, consuming video, but not to the level of someone who creates video for a living is consuming. So, yes, if you ask me, I'd say there's too much content out there. But to the regular person who maybe has the job of a solicitor, for example, they'll probably tell you there's too many contracts out there. I think there's an important reference that we always have to make. To answer the second part of that question of, is it going to become more of a mainstay? Have we reached peak video? I don't know the answer to that question, and I wouldn't claim to. I think what I am very confident in is that we have nowhere near reached the peak of people needing to hear from real people, and whatever form that is going to take in the future, who knows? Like, we're probably not that far away from holograms, for example, but that is becoming more and more important. The number of faceless conversations that all of us are having every day. Like, the adoption of ChatGPT is huge, right? Like, even people, my parents are using it now, but that is still just a conversation with a keyboard, essentially. So that break and juxtaposition of hearing from a real person is still incredibly important, and I think will become more so, at least in the short to medium term. But then, yeah, like, if I knew what was going to happen in the long term, we'd be doing something very different, I'm sure.
I think, yeah, again, tying into a lot of stuff they've been talking about with Google I/O. You mentioned like holograms kind of jokingly there, but like Google Beam is a thing where it's going to project a 3D. You and I could be having a full 3D in-person digital conversation right now, rather than through StreamYard, which is what we're using to record this. And I wonder if we're like crossing into that uncanny valley kind of side of things, and we're pushing through that threshold, like you said, especially and almost exclusively for the content and video nerds like us, where we're experiencing it every day, we're creating it every day, we're really in that thing. And like you said, the normies, my friends partners, my family, all that kind of stuff, have really no idea what's going on. And I had, of course, the classic conversation with my wife last night of like, there's some mad stuff going on with Google right now. As soon as you open your phone in the next few months, it's going to be fundamentally different. And I'm sure you've had this experience many times. I'm sure viewers and listeners have had this as well, where you'll get one of your friends who is not digital marketing savvy necessarily or doesn't work in the industry say, so I searched the other day and a weird thing popped up, or how come this thing's here, or why did that change? What's a what's a custom GPT? What's a GPT? What does that even stand for? And you suddenly have this realization of, oh yeah, I'm really like in deep. I'm wading through all of this stuff, like you were saying. And I think having conversations with our clients, our brands, friends and family, all that kind of stuff, is where you kind of get the insights of what are normal people doing, what are the vast majority of people actually caring about and talking about. And like you said, more and more people are using Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, YouTube long form, all that kind of stuff. But I'm seeing more and more brands be more aware of it as well, using agencies like 1225, like Canva, like other agencies as well that are doing good work where it comes to that kind of multi-channel approach we were just talking about, right? From what I understand, from what Google is saying, and from what ChatGPT has said, and there's been studies done into things featured in LLM search and AI powered search, it seems that social media, those kind of external sources and links, and video are going to be a key part of that. Do you think that's going to tie into, again, not to future predict everything, right? But like, do you think that's going to tie into a lot of the strategies as the search landscape continues to evolve over the next year, 6 months, 10 months, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think it already has, in all honesty. And I think the problem comes when we we hear the word multi-channel, and the problem with that is that it's probably at the moment a catch-all for, or yeah, it's a catch-all for people thinking I need to be everywhere all at once. And at the moment, I think that is what is blocking the mass adoption of these types of strategies. And it is very much a challenge that we're seeing with our clients, is that the laundry list of things that we're starting to have conversations about just keep growing. As you know, like we hear one platform says this, another platform says that, then you have, like, say, Google come out and do something different then, because like ChatGPT and OpenAI, they're in a race with Google to see who's going to own this space in the future and things like that. Is that that's that's way too much information for anybody to really form a savvy marketing strategy on. And that is the challenge that we're having at the moment. And I think really what we need to do is, and I'm a big advocate of this with our clients, is take a step back of your audience, what channels they really going to be on, not the ones that we could be on, which are the ones that they are on. And the best way to do that, and this is something that is so underutilized, it's I can't believe it, is like, ask them. Like, most businesses exist because they have some form of happy clients, right? Like, don't get me wrong, in our time, especially when we first started out, we worked with some businesses where they didn't have any happy customers. But for the most part, if you have a successful business, you have some happy customers. Go and speak to them and understand how they're consuming the information about your product or service, and how frequently. And you'll find that we're still, even now in this world that is multi-channel, we're only talking a handful, maybe even a couple that you can count on one hand, of channels where they're really doing this discovery and this research. And so, yes, by default, it is technically multi because it is more than one. But I think the phrase at the moment is making this sound like a significantly bigger change than I think it is. Don't get me wrong. I think fundamentally, yes, the tactics, the channels that we're going to be on are going to look significantly different. But I think the premise of how people discover is still going to be quite similar, which is everyone's going to have a couple of go-to resources. Find what those go-to resources are for your audience, and then make sure you have visibility there. Is something that we're pushing really hard on for now, which is, let's not go crazy. Let's just try and take a very prudent approach to the next couple of years, and then we'll see where we end up.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're totally right. I think we see the phrase multi-channel, and again, I'm totally guilty of this on the podcast, throwing it around and just assuming that means absolutely everything. And like you said, you need to be absolutely everywhere all the time. But actually narrowing it down to a couple or a handful at most of the places where your customers are, where your clients' customers are, and understanding what kind of content do you consume there. Like, I probably read, I don't know, a handful of articles a week, but consume hundreds of hours of video and podcasts and stuff. Obviously, that's kind of my thing. That's why I do the job that I do. But I watch so much YouTube stuff. I have YouTube Premium, so I can watch it in the background and all that kind of stuff, right? And I think if you can get into an audience that is really switched on a particular platform, a lot we talk about with kind of like long tail keywords and stuff, right? That conversion rate and the intent there is so much more connected to the audience, like you said, from the audience first approach, than it is if you're just kind of I don't know, let's invest a tenth of the budget in 10 different platforms and just kind of scattershot it and hope for the best. A far more focused approach, again, following your example and from my experience, has been so much more successful in actually, like you said, that actual business goal growth rather than just traffic is up or numbers are up or whatever. An actual metric at a KPI that matters. You can drive more revenue, you can get more customers, you can build more engagement, get those more positive reviews as well. And like you said, I think that is a common thing I hear from guests on the show is like, talk to your customers. I know I had Kobe Omanaka on the show a few weeks ago, and like his tip at the end was, I think you just said, talk to your customers, talk to your customers, talk to your customers over and over again. It's like, yeah, we should be doing that. And I know some people do, but I think you should be keeping track of that stuff, right? Actually be aware of what they're saying and understand what kind of phrases people are using in those reviews. I know I was talking to Renee Bigelow a few months ago, like actually tokenizing customer reviews and stuff like that. And that kind of blew my mind of like, oh, you could pick out specific phrases and keywords that are common across multiple reviews and then discuss that in testimonials and stuff with those customers. I'm like, that is a really clever way of doing it. And actually like using a data-led approach to customer review analysis as well, and turning that all into useful stuff you can use for your content strategy, right?
Yeah, so actually, I have like like for us super relevant example of that because before we press the record button, we were talking about the fact that well, both sides we had websites launching today. So the website that we launched for a law firm in Birmingham is our first, what I'd describe as true example of an audience first website. And because we did exactly that, we did one thing where we did a set of customer interviews and then did like segment analysis and things like that. But one of the most powerful things that we did, and it was so easy, it probably only took half hour, was we used a Google Chrome extension to export across their locations all of their Google reviews, and then just plug that into ChatGPT and said, just give us a graph of the most frequently used words to describe this company. And that then became the foundation for our tone of voice guidelines. That tone of voice guidelines then produced obviously the copy. That copy then led to the videos that are hosted on this website. And the thing that came up to the most used word or like category of words for this company was basically variations of human. So human, real, people, those kind of things. Because again, law is another one of those things that no one really thinks about until they have a problem. And then having someone who can explain to you like you're a child, because most of us don't understand anything to do with, say, like litigation or anything like that. You just want help. Was eye-opening, and that was the most frequently used word across the reviews and then across the testimonials. And then that has just formed the foundation of potentially their entire launch strategy. So that is that it's incredibly powerful and really doesn't take that much heavy lifting to do. The other thing that I just want to pick up on something you said, and this is, you mentioned this might happen, is that once you get talking, you end up thinking, oh, maybe I should have mentioned that, or maybe I should think about this, or I've never thought about this and I'm going to say it now for the first time, which is the creation of the metric search volume might be one of the worst things that happen from a marketing perspective. Because all of the things that we speak about
Sounds like a hot take. I don't disagree with you, mate. I don't disagree with you.
Because all of the things that we just been speaking about there are what I would describe as like if we were having the conversation with marketers of like 50 years ago. Like if you think about like Mad Men, for example, and then the TV show and how they used to do things back in the day, all of those things sound so obvious. But then as SEOs, we've got so wrapped up in these metrics of what we think will lead to success that we almost sometimes, and I'm very guilty of this, forget to apply almost common sense and what real people want because we're going, well, Ahrefs doesn't say that. But if you've got 10 happy customers telling you that's exactly what you should be doing, go do that thing. And yeah, I said never really thought about it like that before, but I think that is maybe a hill that right now I'd be prepared to die on.
Well, then we could spin off into a whole conversation. Funny enough, by the time this episode comes out, I will have had this conversation. But I'm going to be doing a kind of like a panel episode with an amazing crew and cast of Jenna Alderson, Dawn Anderson, Chris Green, and Miriam Jessier, and just like getting into all the AI mode stuff and tracking and how we think it's going to work. Because at the moment, at time of recording, maybe by the time this comes out, we will have a bit more information. But I know the Google team seem to be saying one thing, and some of the search liaisons seem to be saying other things. And are we going to be able to see any of our clicks or whatever in Search Console or analytics and all that kind of stuff? And the same thing with search volume. And I came up with it's a theory, but an idea a few weeks ago that was, as we move into this kind of more conversational way of searching, like you said, putting things into ChatGPT, having conversations with Gemini or whatever it's going to be. AI mode is going to be far more conversational as well. And Google has said that is going to be the primary search product. It's not going to be have like, oh, you can also do the little normal tap on your keyboard kind of stuff. It's mostly going to be AI mode. The way we're searching is fundamentally changing the language that we use and vice versa. So you're not going to have search volume for how do I find the nearest lawyer to me who can give the best advice on litigation, make sure they have at least a 4-star rating on Google and TripAdvisor or whatever, like not TripAdvisor, you know what I mean, another review platform, and like that fully like multimodal, multifaceted kind of search. That is zero search volume, like fundamentally, because even though you and I are of similar age, similar experience in the same industry, we would word it completely different ways. And especially if search is being personalized as well, I think you're spot on, Harry, that we're seeing the end of search volume, hopefully, maybe. We're in that kind of tail end of its relevancy. And I think you're totally right. So many people have built so many campaigns and strategies off of it just as this is our header term or whatever. This is the highest volume thing, so let's target that. It's like, but that's not how that works. That's not necessarily conducive of what the actual audience are saying. That's a global stat or an entire UK stat or an average across the last 16 months or 12 months. That doesn't necessarily tie into a bunch of stuff that is relevant. So I think you've nailed it there, mate. I think you're spot on. Sounded like a hot take, but I'm agreeing with you.
I think the other thing that there's a really hard balance to this, and I speak about it with our team quite a lot, which is like I wouldn't describe myself as change resistant, but I am definitely pessimistic of how long things take to become mainstream or how long things actually take to come to fruition. And I think it's very easy for us to start to panic because, like you said, that fundamentally is changing and it is coming soon to a point. But I think what we're about to see is I don't know, like maybe even 10 years ago, this first conversation started coming up. Of like people started to panic because voice search was going to become a thing, right? And then
Yeah.
like it's probably only just now becoming a thing. I speak to any kind of LLM, probably I actually speak to it more than I type on it because again, is it really a great user experience at the minute? Like I get the conversational aspect of it, but is it that great? Is it really an improvement on typing like a small sentence into Google to get an answer? It's probably not. I think the thing that is a better user experience is for most people anyway. I would include myself in this camp of I prefer to talk to something than have to type something. So we're probably only now starting to see that, and it's nowhere near how people thought it would work. Because essentially, what is happening is it's just transcribing what you say and then going to get you an answer based on what you said. But that is a 8 to 10 year timeline before this is starting to become mainstream. And I think that again is fundamental for most of the businesses we work with. Like I'm very proud to say that most of the businesses that we work with, whilst they're incredibly exciting businesses that want to grow, I hope many of them probably won't mind being called fairly boring businesses as well. Like they're not cutting edge SaaS businesses, right? They're many, especially in the care space, they're brick and mortar businesses. They're real businesses. Like Of course, there is always a rate of change, but their marketing can probably still be fairly stable for the next 5 years and allow them to grow incredibly successful businesses whilst having an eye still focused on the future. I think because of what we do, we put so much pressure on ourselves to try and be riding that wave. But at the same time, I do think it is you can still grow an incredibly successful company being slightly behind the first person having a crack at that wave. And I think taking time to allow yourself a greater understanding sometimes can be just as powerful as trying to be the first mover.
100%. Yeah. And I think we're seeing that a lot with how much the SERPs have changed in terms of video content as well, right? I've seen TikToks and YouTube shorts and stuff like that being featured on the SERPs. I know Dre DeVera, who does the SEO video show, talks so much about the power of live streaming as well. And it's something I've done a little bit here and there. And Mark and I have done a few things on LinkedIn. I've done a few YouTube things over the years and stuff like that. But I've never really had that conversation with a client before. When you're discussing that kind of video strategy with the client, are you thinking about the kind of things that might be working in terms of that format, in terms of short form, long form, tying it in and making it live streams or whatever? Have you had those kind of conversations when it comes to trying to convince somebody like, right, you need to sit in front of a camera for an hour and talk to it?
Yeah, so it's interesting actually. So we we say this to a lot of our clients, which is really to an extent where our value is just holding people accountable. Like the ability to create video content now is really really easy. Like you can get a decent mic, like the DJI mic 2, they're like 200 quid. They're perfect. Got a decent mic. Pretty much everyone's got some kind of smartphone that's gonna have a half decent camera on it. You could crack on, and like you say, if you're just doing something that's live stream or relatively long form, you don't even have to edit it. Really, you can just post it out there, and if you find and stumble across the right audience, you're in a fantastic place. But what most people struggle with, and I'd include myself in this, you've probably seen I haven't posted on LinkedIn for about a month, which is quite unusual for me, is it seems to get busy because we've all got other things going on. We've got clients we've got to keep happy. We've got businesses to run. We've got people that are leaving. You have to go hire somebody else. There's always more important things than pressing the record button, right? But if you're paying someone like 12.25, one of the things that you end up with is, well, once a month we're knocking on the door saying, well, let's record some content, and you don't really have a choice but to get into that. But the other thing is, yeah, and it's a good point. Is we always say to our clients, there's to a point two different avenues that we can explore here, and it's really whichever one to start with. You're more comfortable, and then over the course of maybe 3 to 6 months, as you start to become more comfortable, you then have to start to explore what is going to have the biggest impact on the bottom line. Because ultimately, like the probably the greatest misconception of video is that I probably fell into the trap saying like that it's easy and it's cheap. And I argue that to
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
right, it's neither of those two things. So you have to start seeing a return on investment at some point. So the two avenues that we explore with our clients right now are we can take an SEO approach to this and start off really simple, which is and we've had loads of success with this for clients in especially the removal space, which is go to Google, find whatever location they're targeting. So take one of our clients as an example, they do removals in London. So we just Google London removals, extracted 200 people or so ask questions, put a camera in front of the owner of that business and said, right, answer every single one of these questions, because there are only people also ask questions because someone's asked them at some point. He answered 200 questions over the course of 3 months. We wrote blog posts and that posted that video for every single one of them. And then ultimately we were like, okay, that's great. That is growing. We're getting the traction there. But also, how can we take this further? How can we turn one piece of content into many? It's like, well, if people are asking these questions, where are people going to seek answers to these questions? They were going to Google, and I remember Ray Sadiq and I spoke about this once in some content that we did together, which was the like Facebook groups, especially local Facebook groups, are essentially the new town halls, right? Like people don't go to community centers anymore; they go to Facebook groups to see what's going on in the neighborhood. But it's also where they start to go to ask questions about removals when they're looking to move house. we just drop those questions and like, hey, look, we know people are asking how to pack clothes, for example. Here's a video on that. We know how people are asking how big a van do I need. Here's a video on that. And it's a really simple and quite basic strategy that for them has had very significant results in terms of lead generation. Through to the other side of things, which is, and I'll speak about care here quickly because I think it's a great example of this, which is removals. Still doing what I was saying, pretty boring. You're moving boxes into a van, taking them out. It's kind of what that process looks like. From a Marxist perspective, care homes are an absolute dream. Like, these are people with decades and decades and decades of wisdom and stories to tell. And you know, as you get to a certain age, you lose some of your inhibitions and you care a little bit less about what you say, and it can be quite funny, it can be quite emotional, and they're incredible stories to market. So there, in many ways, we actually fall into the trap of chasing virality a little bit more because it is a very viral topic. Like we see that all the time, and we see more and more brands moving into that space as well. But it also allows us to jump on trends and play the game that way. And we've had some really good success. Like, we had one cafe we worked with where I can't remember the guy's name, but do you know the guy who was dipping his face in water and doing like the 7 hour morning routine?
Oh yeah.
We had a care home resident recreate that video. That went that one was amazing. It did like 2.5 million views. I think it was really impressive. But where we are finding the return there was a really unlikely place, which was the grandchildren of potential residents were seeing these videos, then showing their parents. Their parents were then taking a much more, I'd say, traditional search approach to that, combined with the fact that their child had said, like, oh, hey, look, this care home is doing this. Combine that, and we see the output that way. So the two avenues that we'd explore, either yes, you go down the social route first and can then link that back to search, or you take the search route and start slowly linking that to social. But ultimately, probably overuse the word simple, but I don't think it's rocket science. It's just a bit. But if you're an SEO like I was, it was just a bit scary to move into a field that sounds so different from what you've been so comfortable doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think that we talk so often about how the traditional marketing funnel doesn't really exist anymore, and the multiple touch points of search and all that kind of stuff, right? I know the numbers now, and the like, how many times you see a brand before you click or interact and stuff is in the 20s, 30s, and 40s at this point, rather than the traditional like 9 times or whatever it was 5-10 years ago. And I think a lot of people don't talk about the element you just talked about, with multiple people and that weird little word of mouth middly bit that kind of connects everything, where you can take, like you said, the grandchildren from a social side of things, and then the parents then using traditional search, and both of them getting good results that align with each other, that are consistent, that show that the brand knows what they're talking about. And oh, my kid wasn't just making that up or talking rubbish or whatever. Like, you get that moment of like, oh yeah, that really works. I know when I first started in SEO, I was working for a English language school, and it was before I knew really what I was doing was SEO, and it was having conversations with international students and their parents, and we're working out ways of how to market to the parents and also to the kids, and how to encourage them to have conversations of like, well, the parent is kind of the decision maker at the end of the day, but the kids are probably going to kick up a fuss if they don't like it. So you kind of got to convince both. And like you said, audience and stuff and personas are not as simple as they seem, but understanding those relationships is really straightforward once you actually think about it. Like, of course, parents and children and grandchildren and the grandparents are going to be involved in that process. That's obvious, but you wouldn't even think necessarily, if, like you said, if you're going for that traditional kind of single channel or even the multi-channel kind of scattershot stuff, you wouldn't be thinking about how to market to two different audiences to combine that into a single outcome, right? Like, it's a really good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think you summarized it really nicely there, which is there is. Don't get me wrong, that there are clients that we work with where this doesn't apply, and that there are clients that we are, but almost in, apart from maybe our e-commerce clients, but for the most part, even in like, like your life, my life, most of the decisions that I make are in some way decision by committee. Because if I buy a toaster and my fiance doesn't like that toaster, I've made a mistake. because for the next, no matter how good that toast is, if she didn't want that toast, if she wanted a different one, then we're going to be at odds for at least a couple of weeks. So whilst I might be conducting one level of search, she might be searching a different way. So, and you see that
Like we
more
were
and more
saying
so.
earlier, with us being very switched on, and maybe our partners aren't as switched on,
Yeah,
then you kind of have to understand both sides, right? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think that it's not that easy to, yeah, if you want to create a persona for that, that's not easy. That's going to take some time. That's going to take some real thought. That's going to take some real data. But the premise of it, and thinking, hang on, I'm a person. How am I making my decisions? With my significant other, with my parents, with my household. Like, you can put yourself in your own shoes. You don't have to go into someone else's shoes to figure out, okay, that's how it's happening. Let's figure out how we can address that.
100%. Yeah, I think there's a whole side of that kind of conversation, especially when you're thinking about, like you said, the boring stuff, legal stuff, house stuff, care stuff, financial things, all the kind of like super strict regulations and all that kind of thing. The big decisions that often tie into the YM whale stuff we talk so much about in SEO. It can really come down to, you have to convince basically a whole group of people or a whole family or a whole household that you're actually going to do this thing. Could be as simple as a toaster, could be a mortgage. It could be a huge life-changing decision that is a 30 to 40-year commitment for the rest of your life kind of thing. Or it can be, I don't like, well, if we're having toast at the same time, you need 4 slots. So I can have 2 slices and you can have 2 slices. Why did you buy a 2 slice one? Now I've got to wait for you to finish your toast. Like, oh yeah, we should have probably talked about that. And I've seen plenty of things that market to couples or siblings or parents and children, right? They do the like combined thing where you're looking at both. And I think you got to tread that line quite carefully sometimes, and kind of make sure you are not like doing the cringe Gen Z trend, like taking it a bit too far and be like, in our Gen Z intern wrote this marketing copy. What's up, my homies? And you're like, oh God, here we go. Like, yeah. But there is ways that that can work.
Yeah.
There is genuinely ways that that can work.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I think this again, I think it shows you the like the form or the way that things are delivered does change over time. Like, of course it does. That's just how we evolve as people. But the premise is still saying the same. Like, as you were talking there about, like, okay, you're marketing to most people. You're talking about mortgages. Like, my brain immediately went to, I can't remember that guy's name, but do you remember, like, the Halifax dude, in the
Oh
TV
yeah.
adverts, right? Like,
Oh God, what was his name?
but people, like, not even that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, there'd be like a face of a brand like that, and everyone's like, I love that guy. And like, that has evolved now. And then, like, yeah, okay, like, what, like, you see like brand partnerships, and of course you, like, yeah, like David Beckham and Ninja and things like that. But ultimately, that's all we're trying to achieve with our clients as well, which is like, be that person for your business. Let them be the face that two people can agree on that they really like. Is ultimately what we're trying to do, and that's been the same for decades in marketing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Howard from Halifax was the guy's name, and you get those. You can get little things, simple little things like jingles and ads and all that kind of stuff that really stick out. I know so many people who know, childhood adverts off the top of your head and all that kind of stuff, right? Those tiny little catchy jingles, and that can translate into so many different formats. And then we see the same thing now. You're trying to grab attention, you're trying to connect, like you said at the very start of the episode, put a face to your brand and put a face so you can connect with human people. You can do that through video so much easier than you can do it through basically anything else. Even if you have a little author page and a little profile picture and all that kind of stuff, it's not quite the same as somebody actually talking into a microphone, into a camera directly to you in that way. So when you're having those kind of conversations, thinking about that side of things when it comes to video content, what are the ways you found to create those engaging videos to not end up in the cringe pile I mentioned earlier and actually make stuff memorable and engaging?
So I heard someone else say this on the podcast maybe like a year and a half ago, when we took it into everything that we do, is that things always become cringe when, and it's going to sound a bit buzzwordy, but I think it's very true, is that you end up going to the other side of the cringe scale when you end up just trying to be someone that you're not. And what happens, especially in the early days of pressing the record button, is that you don't really have a frame of reference for who you want to be in front of the camera. So
Mm.
you end up either consciously or subconsciously imitating the people that you watch, right? Like if that I consume similar to you, that I consume a lot of YouTube videos. And of course, I have my favorite people to watch. And my default in the early days of being in front of camera myself was to speak and make hand gestures and talk to the camera in the way that they did because that's what I was comfortable with. But I'd watch it back and be like, "What are you doing? Like that isn't you." And that's because you need to, and it's really hard to do, but you have to find your voice, and that just takes, unfortunately, a lot of practice. And a thing that everyone does, and we every new client we speak to, we always carry out this, which is when we send you your first round of videos, you're going to think they're awful because not many
Yep.
people have watched themselves back before. Not many people have heard themselves for a long time, right? Like, how often do you listen to your own? Well, we do a lot, but most people don't listen to their own voice back a lot. And you're like, do I really sound like that? Do I really look like that? Why do I keep saying that? Like, that filler word and things like that. It's a horrible, horrible experience, and we don't shy away from that. But if you can get used to recording, watching, tweaking, and changing, recording, watching, tweaking, you develop your own style very quickly. And then you never have to worry about being cringe again. As long as you're not trying to be the person that you like and try to be the person that you are, you avoid you easily avoid the cringe factors that many people are afraid of.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. Having done podcasting for 15 years, voiceovers for 10 years, and videos for about 3 years now, I know exactly what you're talking about. I am so having this conversation with people are like, oh, don't you hate hearing your own voice? Like, I am so numb to my own voice now. I just don't even notice it anymore. I have edited basically every podcast I've ever done in the last 15 years. I have heard hundreds and hundreds of hours of me talking absolute rubbish about video games and SEO and movies and all kinds of stuff. And I think, God, you're an idiot. But I'm so used to hearing my own voice. And on camera is a totally separate skill as well. And again, something I've developed recently, like I'm doing my hand gestures right now, right? I'm quite a movie talky kind of person. I move around a lot when I talk. And being aware of like where you're looking. Are you looking straight down the barrel of the lens? Are you looking, I could be looking at you, Harry. So I'm looking at you on the screen right now. But to the listeners, I'm looking all the way down here and it looks really weird. And that's really counterintuitive for a lot of people to be like, no, talk directly to the down the barrel of the lens. Ignore me, the director or the producer or whatever over here. I'm floating around. Talk directly down the barrel of the lens. And I find so many people really struggle with that kind of stuff. Just the simple things, like you said, of get used to recording yourself. Record a bunch of stuff so you can get your fails and yours out of the way early because you're going to learn from them as well. Get all the oh no, sorry, let's do another 15 takes, whatever it takes, and get them out of the way and start recording yourself. And that's totally what I did in my early career. And now why I do podcasting for a living is like, I think that eventually paid off, thankfully. Finally, I'm actually able to do it as a job.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you at the start about our podcast, and my co-founder Brendan. Brendan's a great example where he, even to this day, he hates being on camera. He hates doing any form of podcast. We just make him do it, really, by force. But what he did was exactly that. He just said, "Okay, I hate this. The thing that he really struggles with, I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying, is most intros are maybe not scripted, but they have like key points that you need to hit when you do like a podcast intro, for example. And thinking that and then saying that is a very unique skill set that you don't realize until you start. So one of the things that Brendan did is he just took himself off for 6 hours, wrote intros, and then recorded them back on his phone. It was just in his conservatory. There's no background, nothing fancy.
Yep.
Just going, okay, did I like that? Didn't I like that? Would I do it? And then that occasionally he'd send one to us on WhatsApp and say, what do you think of this one? How can I improve? And you have to. The problem we have with social is that it's so abundant and there's so much content out there that all of the people that we all relate to, like almost all of us will be following some form of influencer in whatever space and niche we're interested in, is that they're putting hundreds, if not thousands of hours in to get to the level of delivery they're at now. And one of the things that we really encourage our clients to do is whoever they engage with, where if it's a YouTuber, if it's a TikToker, if they're on Facebook, wherever their main channel is, wherever their main source of influence is, go back and just sort the videos from oldest to newest and just watch their first 5 to 10 videos. I can guarantee you, it doesn't matter who they are, they're all terrible. And it just takes time to get better at it.
100%. I did the exact same thing as you said there with Brendan, like recording myself back in the day, training into the being able to read something and talk at the same time, or read a thing that you're not talking about yet, like what we're doing with the show notes right now, right? So I know most of the listeners know this, if you're a long time listener and stuff. I'm pretty diligent with my show notes. Some people just go in, no notes, and we just have a conversation. But for my brain, I need to write stuff down, otherwise I'm going to forget. And if there are some key points I want to hit on my conversation with Harry, I'm going to make a note of it. And that means sometimes I'm looking over here and being like, oh, yeah, we definitely need to talk about video format. Oh, yeah, we need to talk about this thing. Oh, well, Harry putting out about this thing. Let's touch on that and connect the dots and stuff, right? I think a lot of people really struggle to continue to talk and also read something else and then come back again. Maybe it's an advantage of my ADHD. I'm able to kind of bounce back and forth in that way. But for years, like I said, I've done voiceover and voice acting over the years as well. Reading stuff, literally writing a podcast intro, writing a little script, pretend to do ad reads or whatever it is, of like, take your favorite childhood ads we're joking about earlier, right? Pretend to be Howard from Halifax. Pretend to be the you buy one you get one free guy from those Windows ads back in the day. Whatever it is, hum a jingle or whatever it is. I have actually, very brief tangent, got into the bad habit of singing the jingles on my movie podcast, and I don't know if I should be. I've added vocals to them over the years. And it's like maybe not. But I think there's a real kind of, I don't know, necessarily like that attention grabbing kind of importance to the first 7, 10, 15 seconds of an intro, right? Every single YouTube creator, every single TikTok creator talks about how important those first 5, 7 seconds are. Sometimes even 3 seconds, depending on the platform, because you will literally just scrolling and seeing a thing that is auto playing, or you might not even have sound. Like you may have noticed, viewers on YouTube, if you're scrolling past and stuff, I always put subtitles for the first 2 sections, which is my intro and the highlight reel of the guest, because you might just be scrolling past and you see the little subtitles, right? I don't do that for the entire show. That would be mad, and I would find that very distracting. And also, YouTube has a pretty good system, and now Spotify does as well, weirdly enough, to do that kind of thing. But training yourself to be able to sound natural while reading stuff is such a different skill. And I know plenty of podcasts I listen to, and again, I consume far too many podcasts at this point. I think I'm at about 60 on my subscription feed at the moment, which is obnoxious. But I get into almost like repeating the intros that some people do. They get, like you said, you get into that cadence, you get into that little rhythm, right? Of like, hello everybody, welcome to the show. It's da 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 da, and my guest is da 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 da. And you kind of get that little rhythm. And plenty of creators I know have little like catchphrases and little bits that kind of hook you in. And once you've listened to a bunch of stuff or watched a bunch of stuff, you get like, oh yeah, he's always going to intro this, or that she's always going to do this. And I find that stuff really like entertaining and engaging, and makes me feel like I'm part of the insider crew, if that makes sense. Tiny little things like how I pronounce things, or how the rhythm of your intro can make such a big difference.
Yeah, so just quickly, they just triggered a thought that I had, which is everything you said there is spot on. And as soon as you decide, actually, I'm going to start creating video content, you'll head to some kind of search tool and do some form of discovery. And people will start saying things like you said, and you're absolutely right, that the first, depending on platform, 3, 5, 7 seconds are crucial. And people will then start talking about, say, the power of the hook in the video, and then making sure that you get the payoff at the end. And yeah, there is a science to a lot of these videos, especially if you're chasing metrics like virality. But I see all of that, because we've been guilty of it, is it can also just be a blocker to getting started. And one of the big
Absolutely.
needle shifters that we find for some of our clients is the power for 3 to 6 to 9 to even 12 months sometimes. You can get real business growth from just showing up. Like if you're in an industry where very few people are creating video, just because you're creating video is a competitive advantage. And someone will say, I've seen your video on LinkedIn, or I've seen your video on TikTok. And Similar to what you say. They might not have even watched it. They might have just seen it on their feed and seen the subtitles of the first couple of seconds, but they have seen you and seen you showing your passion for whatever sector or niche that you were in. So yes, there is a science, and as soon as you start to get some kind of payoff from the work that you're doing on video, you will gain some momentum and want to go down those rabbit holes and start to learn how to make your content better. But don't let this science of great video content be a blocker to getting started, because almost every client that we work with, including ourselves and our business, is we have seen direct business growth from just posting videos, even if they're bad, because people see us
Yep.
showing up and showing that we care about the work that we do.
Like you said, especially in industries where we were using the examples earlier of like legal stuff or the boring ones where like people don't really talk about that stuff. And you get an example. I've totally done this before, searching on YouTube, and then the only video that's relevant is 12 years old. I'm like, well, okay, fine. And it was filmed on some Motorola phone in someone's kitchen, and I'm like, okay, right, no, I'm gonna have to deal with this. Right, strap in, see if I can work this out. Maybe I should search somewhere else, right? And you go to TikTok, and there's a whole like sub industry of people that are creating this thing. Or go to Instagram, there's a whole other realm of people. And it's exactly tying back to what we said 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago, whatever it was. Be where the people are. And also on the other side of that, you can be the first to be where they are. If you think your audience are there and your competitors aren't there, be the first. You can essentially rank for free is a very, very dodgy term, but you know what I mean, right? Like if there's basically no competition, coming back around to the lack of search volume and all that kind of stuff we were saying earlier, like then that's a way of basically defining the industry around yourself rather than following the trends. You can set the trends, which is very important in the eyes of many search engines and many users in terms of that unique content, that freshness, that information gain, if we're getting all technical about it as well, right? If you're the first person to talk about it on a platform, you could become the person to talk about it on that platform very quickly.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think it is that all of the things that we're talking about, even if you just do them by accident, will all tie in together. And I think that is really crucial. Which is if you're, taking an element of let's call it traditional search strategy and starting to create some content that you can choose how you distribute that. If it goes on social, if it goes on traditional search platforms, but for this point, it doesn't really matter where you're going to put it. It will organically start to come to a much bigger piece anyway. And yeah, I think the one of the notes that I wrote down in the show notes that you're talking about was just keep it simple and get started. And what I really hate about that advice is that it's so cliche. Like if you watch any podcast or any video about literally anything, it could be like I'm a big golfer. Like if you go watch like the first set of YouTube videos you come to if you're learning to play golf are the basics, like how to grip the club and how to swing. And every single one of those inevitably will have the advice of just go to the driving range, pick up a golf club, and hit a golf ball. And the problem is the advice is so basic. It seems wrong because of how easy that advice is. But the reality is that is that for many industries and for many people trying to do the things that we've spoken about for the last hour, they, there aren't many people in the industry doing it because the blocker seems both so significant and so small at the same time.
Yeah, exactly as you were saying earlier, right? You can't just aim to be, oh, who's this person with 100 million views or 10 million subscribers or whatever it is. You're not going to do that overnight. You have not seen, exactly as you were saying earlier, Harry, like the years and years and years of content they've been creating, or the strategies and the blood, sweat, and tears they've poured into it in many ways. But you've got to start somewhere. And I think a lot of people say this about podcasting, a lot of people say this about video, a lot of people say this about content in general. Like, oh, it's just talking into a microphone. Oh, it's just talking at a camera. Oh, it's just writing stuff down. It's like, well, yeah, art is just drawing stuff. Music is just playing an instrument. Like, that's not how that works. If everyone could make everything, then nobody would have any specific skills. That's ridiculous. You're a much better golfer than I am, but I'm probably a better bass player than you, unless you're also a bass player, Harry. Like, I am a terrible golfer. I've played golf on stag do's, and that's about it. And I am bad. But you don't know until you try, right? Exactly.
Yeah, but it's also a thing of, but if you did start playing golf and you just showed up once a week for 6 weeks or 6 months, you're going to be better than when you started. And I think that is the big thing as well, is that as as professionals in whatever industry that we choose to be in, or as as business owners, we're inevitably good at something, which has got us to the position that we're in now. And it's horrible to go back and be rubbish at something. And that is a
Yeah,
big challenge with video. I would say definitely, again, talking about how technologies and things get adopted over time. Like it's definitely something that we see less of a problem with the younger business owners that we work with. Like if you're I'm 30, for example. So anybody kind of like my age-ish and younger, like it is second nature to be on camera or to have grown up watching like vloggers. Like vloggers were huge when I was a kid, right? So the
yep,
idea of
yep.
picking up my phone and speaking to it doesn't really seem that crazy. But then there is a generational divide. Like I see it even in our office. I'm 30, Brennan, sorry mate, I'm gonna say it, is almost 40. And it's only like a 9 years, it's
Oh,
only like an
sorry,
eight,
Brendan.
it's only like an 8, 9 year swing, but the content that he grew up watching is so drastically different that him getting on camera feels way more uncomfortable. And it's just how it works, but it doesn't mean that he couldn't get good at it, and he's so much better at it now. So bring it back to what we talk about. It sounds horrible, cliche information, but just get started.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's get into some recommendations, shall we, Harry?
Yeah, let's go for it.
What is one actionable thing you'd recommend for people to do right now? Is it literally point yourself at a camera and start talking, or is it something else?
I'll make it a bit more specific than that, because again, as soon as you tell someone to do that, you're then going to get hit with the blocker of I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say. So let's go to the assumption here that the people we're talking about are the people who are either tasked with growing or are tasked with helping somebody grow their business. The first thing that I would say to do is to get started, just go to Google and just export some people also ask questions, or ask ChatGPT to give you some most common questions around a particular subject. And either yourself or the person that you're working with, ask them to answer those questions in front of camera is a great starting point. Because again, for most industries, for those questions, because the search volumes are so low, no one has bothered creating video content for them. So within a matter of hours of you publishing that content, you're going to absolutely dominate the people also ask questions. And just by either you seeing that for yourself or showing your client or whoever it may be that is happening, instantly builds momentum. So in the space of a week, you could go from nothing to publishing some videos, then having some genuine, real, tangible results that are enough to get you and the people that you're working with to come back again.
Very cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. Obviously, the team here at Canada built also asked, so we talk a lot about people also asked data. And funny enough, when I spoke to Darren Shaw last year about local SEO and stuff like that, and how important video can be for that side of thing, so many people, I don't know, Darren will crucify anyone who disagrees, are doing Google posts wrong and Google updates wrong. It is not social media. It is not the same thing, but you can do video content, and taking the questions you get on your Google business profile and turning that into a video response can be transformational for local businesses. Again, you are the only person doing video content in your city about your business. Oh, look, somebody's face pops up. I'm going to click on that person's face, exactly as you're saying there, mate. And there are so many different ways that can work for local, that can work for all kinds of stuff. And I think a lot of people kind of think, oh yeah, video might not be for me, might not be in this case, but a tiny little thing like a 30-second, here are our opening hours and this is how it works. Or if you subscribe for a year, it's this much cheaper than this thing. How much does it cost? All that kind of stuff. You can actually ask yourself questions on your Google business profile as well, by the way, folks. Just be cheeky about it and be like, oh yeah, a customer asked. I'm like, no, yeah, just submit it yourself. It's fine. You can that's totally within the guidelines. I'm not breaking any rules here. But tiny little things like that, little Q&As and stuff like that, where again, coming back around to what you were saying earlier, conversations with your customers. What are the questions that the sales team for your client are having? For example, when people call up and say, oh, I really wanted to buy this thing, but I couldn't do this because of A, B, and C. or how does product A work with service B or whatever it is, answer those things in a video. Then it can make such a big difference actually seeing, oh, that's Jack. That's actually a face of a human talking about it rather than just some auto-generated response. Whatever. Oh, Harry clearly knows what he's talking about because he's answering the questions directly. He's not afraid to be open and upfront and all that kind of stuff. It could be such a big difference maker for sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Next up, recommendation for a tool or a piece of software you've been using that maybe people haven't heard or widely used.
Okay, so this is really, really niche. So good for people who have stuck around this long, may be irrelevant, but it's super niche, but it's been a lifesaver recently. So again, the website that we launched today, video plays a big part for them, but as part of the design, they had this really nice 11-second background video. The problem with that is it's 18 megabytes, and for most people,
Ooh.
wasn't even loading. Right, like that it would play the first second, and then it would just stop because like the server's timed out. It doesn't care. Just leave it there. That'll do. At least it serves something. This tool called Handbrake, which I found and been using for a couple of weeks now, will allow you to encode videos in a way that heavily reduces the file size without really impacting the quality too much. So that specific example, it took it from an 18 meg video to a 3 meg video that, yeah, okay, it's a little bit large if you're trying to comply with all of the best practices with such, but it will load for most people within 0.5 of a second, and you get the experience that the client wants you to have and that we want potential customers to have. So yeah, if anybody's having a problem with that, you don't need to be technical. You just need to follow the instructions that come when you load it up for the first time, and it's been a lifesaver.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. When it comes to implementing videos on the actual site itself, again, there are so many places to go wrong when it comes to audio and encoders and all that kind of stuff. And you can get real tricky whether you're doing like the H.265 or H.264 or MP4 or MPEG-2 and all this kind of stuff. Again, we're being nerdy video people here, but like I have definitely encountered that, especially you get those, like you said, the big, like, nice banner things. It's got to be big because it's the whole banner image, right? Like, yeah, but you don't want, like you said, an 18 meg thing that's going to absolutely crush the page load speed. So yeah, brilliant recommendation. Go and check out handbrake.fr. I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to go and check that out, of course. And the last thing, anything not necessarily SEO related, but it can be if you like. A video, a book, a podcast, a YouTube channel, an article. What have you been enjoying recently, Harry?
Yeah, so I mean, so these are quite work specific, but they have since January transformed the way that we're operating from a business perspective, and I think anybody can steal these and implement them really well. So there are two. One of them is an incredibly old book, but two books that I reread in over the Christmas period. So I reread How to Win Friends and Influence People, and what that has done for our business is enabled us to increase our inquiry to first meeting booking rate. Probably that stats were probably about 60%. Like, it's like you get an inquiry,
Wow.
not everybody comes back. But what we did is we just trained a custom GPT on the learnings from that book to basically write responses that would generate a reply from that initial inquiry based on the learnings from that book. And that has been pretty transformational for that side of things. Then the other thing is the book, The One Thing. That has done two things for our business that I think could do for anybody. Now, you probably don't need to read the book. If you just read the title, you've probably done most of the hard work there. But we have segmented off the first half of every day in our company for the thing that is going to move us forward, and that is the only thing that everybody in the business can do. That has been really powerful. But the thing that has been arguably more important is you can use this to reframe what you're working on. So as soon as you move into video, the first thing that you're going to do, because we all do it, is we'll post that video on whatever platform we choose to post it on, and we'll go, how many views did that get? Now,
you stare at the analytics.
Yeah, and unless you produce an absolute banger on TikTok, you're probably going to end up with about 4 views, because that's just how it works. No one knows who you are. No one's searching for you. You're not going to get any views, and that will continue for a while. But if you can just use the reframing of like, okay, but what is the actual single most important one thing that I was trying to achieve with that video. And I can tell you now, for every single video, no matter who you are, the answer isn't views. It's going to be something else. It's going to be like, brand category affiliation. It's going to be that I needed to demonstrate a particular challenge that my customers are having and I showcase that to them. Or it's going to be, actually, I needed to generate some business. And to the point that we've been speaking about is you've generated 5 or 6 or 7 new customers and they haven't even watched your videos. They just saw that you posted those videos and appreciated the effort. So ask yourself, whenever you're posting these videos, what is the one thing that I'm actually trying to achieve? And it's never going to be views.
Yeah, totally agree, Matt. I think we get stuck in those metrics so easily and so I'm totally guilty of like, oh, the podcast has just gone live. How's it going to do? And like, oh, should I tweak the thumbnail? Oh, should I tweak the title? Like, oh, little changes you can do. That's a valid thing to do, but don't freak out. Like you said, if it just starts at 3 or 4 or 10 or whatever it is, you're going to get that unless you go absolutely viral, like you said, on TikTok or a huge platform. But yeah, brilliant recommendations. I know how to win friends and influence people must be what, from the 40s or 50s. Like that's some old school marketing stuff there. And I think we're having this conversation now where it feels like marketing is coming back round to what it used to be in a weird way, right? We've gone through the various phases of niching down and all that kind of stuff, and we're now back to what's the human psychology behind things, exactly as you said right at the beginning of the show, talking about Mad Men and Don Draper and all the old school like advertising practices and getting inside your customer's head and all that kind of stuff. We kind of forgot that along the way. I feel like a lot of the industry got guilty, advertising, SEO, all that kind of stuff, marketing in general. And now it was like, hopefully a lot of people are having those kind of conversations. We're swinging back in the right direction. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're spot on.
Cool. Well, if people want to follow you, people want to follow 1225 or Care Launch, where are the best places to find you around the internet, Harry?
So this is a nice little final question when we talk about multi-channel, which is exactly that, which is that
Hey, there we go.
we can't be everywhere to everybody all at once. The sole platforms that we use are both our websites, so 1225.io and carelaunch.uk, where all of our content is get posted, and then LinkedIn. We, sadly, spend probably more of my time on LinkedIn than I do with my partner. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out at anything, my mates are probably better off just messaging me on LinkedIn than actually WhatsApping me. I'm more likely to reply there. So LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah, you may not be directly working in SEO, Harry, but yeah, that sounds like an SEO answer to me. I know plenty of people who reply to me quicker on LinkedIn than they do on WhatsApp. And I'm like, what the hell, man? I was like, well, I was on there anyway. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. I'm guilty of that too. Well, links for everything, listeners and viewers, will be down in the description down below, either the pinned comment, video description, or of course the show description on Spotify and Apple as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Harry. It's been a really, really fun conversation. I got to nerd out about video stuff and hear your hot takes and all that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I can't believe that I just checked the recording time on the top. I can't believe it's been as long as it has. Really, really enjoyed it.
And that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you once again to Harry Evans for joining me on the show. That was a really interesting conversation. I hope you are enthused to start making more video content and having those kind of conversations with your clients. Of course, if you have any feedback, like I said at the start of the show, please do let me know. Get in touch and let me know what you thought of this week's episode. And I've got some awesome episodes coming up over the next few weeks as well. I know I teased it last week. I've got a conversation all about communication skills and how important they are when it comes to having difficult conversations with clients and communicating very technical, difficult topics. That is with a fantastic communication coach called Salvatore Manzi. That will be next week. Mark and I will be back in the studio in the not too distant future as well, of course, talking about all the latest SEO news. I even recorded an in-person, in-studio episode returning to the show, Seb Atkinson, very, very cool, and talking all about his content creation process and basically how he makes a revenue-driven and revenue-based model for creating content for clients and how you can actually attribute that to awesome stuff like keyword clustering and all this kind of process going into his content creation that he does with his clients. I've got a schema FAQ coming out in the next couple of weeks with Jarno van Driel as well. Alex Wright is returning to the show. Who else? We've got Ian Ferguson is coming up in the next couple of months as well. Jordan Dimitrov, Aid Holder, I literally just recorded with moments before recording this outro. Aid is brilliant. We're just talking all about the punk ethos and how that can relate to SEO and balancing your personal and your business interests and all that kind of stuff. You won't even hear that until probably September, something like that. I am quite far ahead of myself in terms of recording. So loads of stuff to look forward to over the next 4, 6, probably even 8 weeks or so. I'm already recorded up until. Until then, of course, thank you so much once again for watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening. And I will see you next week.